Off day and good afternoon to you and to the people of Guam. Today is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. This public hearing will be conducted by myself, Senator William A. Parkinson, Chairman of the Committee on Fire, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, Public Transit, Unemployment Insurance, and Universal Health Insurance. This hearing is called to order, and the time now is 2:10. For the record and to comply with the open government law, notice of this hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and local media outlets on Thursday, June 6, 2024. And the second notice was also shared to all senators and local media on Monday, June 10, 2024. Notice of this hearing was also posted and available on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal. We have two bills on our agenda today. We will first discuss Bill number 314-37 LS, and upon conclusion, we will take a short recess and come back for Bill number 290-37 LS. So at this time, we will hear testimony and discussion on Bill number 314-37 LS, introduced by myself, William A. Parkinson, an act to authorize the Guam Department of Agriculture to use funds from the Invasive Species Inspection Fee Fund balance from fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 for the purpose of general operation. I would like to welcome my colleagues who are joining us here today. To my left, I have Senator Dwayne Nicolas and Senator Joanne Brown. To my right, I have Senator Chris Dwayne and Senator Roy Kinanta. Thank you for coming. Rules of conduct of this hearing. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and state your name and title for record-keeping purposes. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimonies shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal infringement as to the character or motive of any senator or any individuals testifying is not permitted. Individuals who fail to abide by these rules will be restricted from participating and will be escorted and removed from the room. We will now proceed with discussions on Bill number 314-37 LS, which I will do by opening remarks as prime sponsor. Bill 314-37 seeks to allow the Department of Agriculture access to revenues from the Invasive Species Fund for the original purpose of the fund, to fund the operations of the Biosecurity Division. These are funds that were collected over and above the projections for the Invasive Species Fund from their respective fiscal years. This bill is at the request of the Department of Agriculture, and so I will let them take the lead on explaining the purpose of the bill and their current needs at the Biosecurity Division.
Hafa-day Senators, good afternoon. Thank you for affording us this opportunity to present our circumstances to you. You have all been very supportive of our agency, some for numerous years, and I think as we present the information relevant to this bill, it will just make sense what we're requesting. Initially, when the Invasive Species Fund was first created, I believe under Senator Dwayne, its intent was to fund the Biosecurity Division of the Department of Agriculture, and the intent was that it would accrue roughly $2 million annually. However, historically, and upon when I entered my office, what we saw was that the fee tended to accumulate or accrue roughly $650,000, $680,000 annually, and that's what was appropriated to the division. And upon exploring the situation, what we realized is that there were circumstances where certain cargo, like break bulk cargo, was not always included or tended to not be included, or certain weights and measures taken for each container we had a hard time validating that against data collected by the port. So in working with our former invasive species coordinator, Mr. Glenn Dula, and the port users group and customs and quarantine, we, through Bill 194-36, we reconciled that and corrected the fee collection process so that it simplified it. And now users pay a flat rate per container. Vehicles were also added, as they can also bring in invasive species into the island. Breakboat cargo like sand was also included, because in prior years we'd also had quarried materials that brought in invasive species, as is documented. And so when the bill was passed and became Public Law 36-87, that was somewhere around the middle of the fiscal year. And when the correction was actually implemented, we were already in the next fiscal year 24, I believe. So shipping agencies that were paying, or shipping companies that were paying the fee, the fund increased its collection, but we had already left that fiscal year, which is why we're asking to be able to utilize the fees collected for the invasive species fee, or the funds collected from the prior fiscal year. Additionally, the division has grown so that it already exceeds the amount budgeted to us or appropriated to us each year, and we're using general fund to supplement some of the positions within the biosecurity division. So allowing us access to the funds that are in the fee, or in the fund that was created for this purpose of operations and personnel for the biosecurity division, will allow us to move all personnel under that special fund, and also hire more of the personnel that's needed, as you'll see in one of the graphic displays that our chief entomologist, Mr. Rosario, has provided.
If we could please put up the supplemental information that I had given. So as you can see here is the organizational chart for the biosecurity division. And as you can see, those orange colored boxes, I'm sorry, it needs, and if anything, I have some.
I believe we provided hard copies.
Some hard copies.
If we could pass out those copies, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I apologize.
I can't see it either.
But as you can see, those orange boxes essentially are the positions that are currently occupying. Those positions are current right now. And so with the biosecurity division, we have 3 sections. The first section is the inland invasive species section. The second section is the inland enforcement section. That's our enforcement side. And then the third section is the administrative section. And the whole idea of these sections is that you have the inland invasive species section, where that covers all the post-border eradication, mitigation, invasive species management that have gone past the border. And so you imagine with coconut rhinoceros beetle, little fire ants, greater banded hornet, all these invasive species that have established their way into Guam, found their way into Guam and have established their presence, that now there needs to be a management aspect to it. And so we need the bodies, we need the technicians and the technical expertise to be able to manage, to help develop some of these programs and to institutionalize it with this fund. And so as you can see, there's literally only one person. And that one person currently right now who sits behind me is currently managing some of the federal grant funding that we're able to obtain in the past. And so as you can see here, that's our one person. And then as far as, so moving on to the inland enforcement section, where you have commodity inspectors that go out and inspect stores, retail facilities, warehouses, and redistributing facilities where some of these invasive species may already have established into. So we, it's vitally important for us to on the enforcement side, the whole goal with that is to ensure that these invasive plants that could be sold in stores or to comply with the eggshell law requirements and several others, especially with the plants, invasive plants that could be potentially sold in stores. And lastly, you got the administrative side. And there's much more I could explain in the inland enforcement side, but between the inland enforcement and the administrative side, we have the permitting, where we issue phytosanitary certificates for products that are potentially exported into Guam. Of course, there is a vision here that we want to export several commodities out from Guam, honey being one of the few products, and we want to make sure that these products are on the market so that we can actually have a unique Guam product leaving Guam. So this is aside from the exporting side. Majority of the permits that we get are the permits for importing plant material. And as you could see up top, where you have the entomologist, the plant pathologist, the botanist, and the invasive species coordinator, which serve as specialized positions, in which you can see below that chart shows the need of these specialized positions. For one, we need a botanist on board. Actually, in fact, we've had this position for, I guess, about 50 years, and it has not been filled. But the need for a botanist at this point is for that special position to evaluate what types of plants can be brought in without having an outbreak, potentially like the Antigonan species, which is, a chain of love, right? The chain of love that so we want to ensure that these plants are being scanned through and researched with the specialized position so that we're not able to have an outbreak. So that's for the botanist position. As for the plant pathologist position, we did have our old invasive species coordinator, Dr. Glenn Dula, who was a microbiologist and specialized in plant pathology diseases. And he both served as the pathologist but sat as the invasive species coordinator. And he too was scanning through all the plant diseases that are coming in. And again, when these plants come in for import, some of them already have disease. Some of them would have plant pests, which is why you see these specialized positions are very much needed. Now, I'm an entomologist. I specialize in insects. Plant pathology is the last thing on my list, but it's very important to have that specific position set. And lastly, the invasive species coordinator position, vitally important. And as you can see with the invasive species coordinator, it's to coordinate all agencies that are involved with invasive species eradication, mitigation, and control. That's, so obviously we call that the Guam Invasive Species Council. And so those are just kind of key highlights of why these specialized positions are needed. And shall I say
I would like to add to that we have federally funded under a grant the Detector Dog Program, which I'm sure, we've introduced it to the community. It's a popular program because everybody loves seeing the dogs and how highly trained they are. But this program is unique in that this is the first time dogs have been trained to detect coconut rhinoceros beetle. And what we saw was that they excelled at it. They went beyond. One of my favorite tests was where a dog was able to detect a coconut rhinoceros beetle that had flown into a 40-foot container within 5 minutes at 20 feet. And the dog was able to find that beetle before it would leave the island and go infect another location.
So yeah, so I would like to introduce you to our program lead of the Detector Dog program, and which was federally funded by Department of Interior about 3 years ago, and it was a 3-year grant. So you know, at the end of this year, we're going to be left with no funds to. So we want to be able to save this program. This program was established through some federal funding, and which is the whole goal of federal funding, right, is to help give seed money to start a program, and now it's our job as a state government to be able to institutionalize this program. So I would like for Mr. Garrett to be able to explain a little bit about the program if you like. So.
Yeah, but before we do that, I'd first like to recognize my colleague, Senator Tello Taitigui. Thank you for coming today. So please continue.
Hoffening, good afternoon. I'd like to thank Chair Parkinson, Vice Chair Bloss, and members of this committee for allowing me this opportunity to provide my testimony. My name is Garrett Certeza, and I am the supervisor and a canine handler with the Guam Invasive Species Detector Dog Team, which is a federally funded pilot project within the Research Corporation of the University of Guam and nestled within the Guam Department of Agriculture. I testify today in support of Bill 314-37, an act to authorize the Guam Department of Agriculture to use funds from the invasive species inspection fee funds balance from fiscal year 2023 and 2024 for the purpose of general operation. I believe that if used appropriately and strategically, the funds from the Invasive Species Inspection Fee Fund will allow the Biosecurity Division to adopt effective tools and skilled employees to help them fulfill their mission in mitigating, managing, and possibly eradicating the invasive species that we face on Guam today. Right now, there are several programs that are being used to combat, as Mr. Rosario mentioned, and prevent the further spread of the invasive species such as the rhino beetle, coconut rhinoceros beetle, and the little fire ant. These include pheromone trap networks around the ports of Guam, pesticide treatments, biocontrol agents, and detector dogs. However, all of these programs that directly address invasive species are not funded by the Invasive Species Fund, but are on soft federal money, which with no guarantee that it will be funded the next year. The program that I manage, the Guam Invasive Species Detector Dog Team, consists of 5 detector dogs, and at its peak, 4 canine handlers. Within the past 2 months, unfortunately, 2 of my handlers have relocated off island. But in 2 years, we have built a 6-capacity dog kennel over at the plant inspection station in Tijan. We have rescued 5 dogs, 2 from Gain and 3 from Hawaii. Those dogs and their handlers, including myself, completed a 9-week federal certification course with the USDA Wildlife Services, which operates the Brown Tree Snake Canine Program. My team has searched thousands of cargo items to date, pallets and vehicles, at the Port of Guam and the Guam Air Cargo Facility in Tijan. In the course of these searches, we have found 3 live CRB, or coconut rhinoceros beetle. 1 at the Port of Guam on a refurbished trash truck that had only been on Guam for 24 hours and was destined for the Marshall Islands, so it was a transshipment in August of 2023. 2 live CRB at the Air Cargo Facility in Tijan, crawling around on the floor midday near cargo that was headed for Sinamai, FSM, and Palau in December of 2023. I was even notified of my counterparts from the Brown Tree Snake Detector Dog Program that they had found 1 live coconut rhinoceros beetle in the landing gear of a United aircraft that was bound for Hawaii in September of 2023. These 3 finds solidify the assumption that the coconut rhinoceros beetle can be found in our seaport and our airport. And like so many invasive species that end up on our island, they can easily hitchhike to our sister islands in the Pacific. As a detector dog handler for 10 years, I can attest to the effectiveness of detector dogs. They can search cargo items more efficiently and quicker than their human counterparts. And my team has been one of the first, if not the first, to use dogs to find a single adult CRB in cargo. I do believe detector dogs were used initially when CRB was found, but that was to find a CRB nest. And we are currently training the same dogs to find little fire ant in these same locations. This model is being used to prevent the brown tree snake from spreading throughout the Pacific, and I believe it should also be utilized within the Biosecurity Division at the Guam Department of Agriculture. Furthermore, these dogs are being utilized at the ports to ensure that cargo is free of invasive species. I believe it would be morally appropriate for funds collected from port users to benefit port users. And I believe our detector dogs would provide that essential service, and access to these additional funds through this bill may allow that to happen. So I'd like to reiterate my support of Bill 314-37 and urge the honorable senators before me to join in my support of this bill. Sizus Masi.
So at this time, I'd like to open up the floor to my colleagues for any questions and concerns they may have. I'll start in the order that everyone knows here. So I'll start with Senator Dwayne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. Thank you, panel, for being here. This Biosecurity Division, is this working with Customs, or does Customs work with you, or does Customs have a separate biosecurity?
So actually, it's actually really unique. At the plant inspection facility, we are housed together. Now, what I mean by, so yes, but specific, the Customs, it's not all of Customs, but there's a specific team that scan through all the commodities that are coming in with or without permits to be able to, all of those commodities that are forwarded to the plant inspection station, we house at least 8 Customs members.
And that's for the biosecurity task force, right? And
yeah,
so
which kind of,
yeah. On top of that, you have your own bunch of inspectors as well?
Yes, we call the commodity inspectors,
And they kind of like do the same thing, is that correct?
No, so commodity inspectors inspect for items that leave the island. So this is for export commodities. But the customs officers inspect for incoming, inbound cargo. So, and any inbound cargo then is, insect is found, it gets forwarded to the plant inspection facility. Actually, in fact, the plant inspection facility will hold some of the live plants and the commodities, in which then they are inspected. And then once that, actually, in fact, in 2 o'clock right now, QUAM is doing a segment on customs right now on how the inspections are being conducted. And then to get back to that, yeah, so when an insect is found on commodities, it's then forwarded to the Department of Agriculture. Specifically, if it's a pest, then insect pest, it gets forwarded to myself, the state entomologist, and then if it's a plant disease, then it's forwarded to the plant pathologist, which I address the need for that. And currently, to fill in that need, that is forwarded to the University of Guam at this time.
Thank you for clearing that up for me. I just want 2 agencies doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, doubling up. And I have another question. And exactly how much money are we talking about here?
It's roughly about 800, well, in fiscal year 2023, the legislature appropriated $641,446 from the Invasive Species Fund for the Department of Agriculture use. However, that same fiscal year, the fund actually collected $1.4 million. But that was when, as I stated, the public law had gone into effect, and so there was a correction made in how much the shipping companies were then paying on all the cargo that was actually coming into Guam.
Okay. Do you think that's the fee could be excessive?
No, not at all. It was the intention of that fee when it was originally created, or the fund, to accrue roughly $2 million. It's just that because of the way the weight was being calculated and cargo were also left excluded, it had never reached that amount.
All right, and how effective is this this program, biosecurity, and given all the invasive species? You mentioned the chain of love. Is that stuff when you're looking up at the hill and
It just
pretty
covers the
big
trees.
flowers
Yes.
covering all the blanketing the forest? I
Right,
don't know if
right.
that's
But
the jungle.
along with that and invasive weeds, this is an invasive weed, right? That we thought at one point in time was a beautiful.
Someone brought it in as a plant.
As a ornamental plant,
Yeah.
but it got out of control.
So it is an ornamental plant?
It started off as that, yes. But historically, I mean, there's a long history here, and I know some of our senators who have been in the prior legislatures are familiar with it, but there used to be what was called the plant inspection, what is it, PPP?
Oh,
Plant
PPQ, so which
PPQ,
is Plant Protection and Quarantine.
that was housed with the Department of Agriculture.
I was there, I
Yeah.
saw the whole thing.
Yeah, so then at that time, there were pests that were interdicted over 100 per month. And then as the program was moved, it became somewhat, there were fewer interdictions, and on some of the data that we have, it was as few as 15 per month. And during that time frame is also when we saw the introduction of like the coconut rhinoceros beetle. And then since then, at the time, Senator Dwayne has introduced the Invasive Species Fund to help fund the Biosecurity Division of the Department of Agriculture. And since that time, what's been happening is we've been trying to build up that section or that division. So
Right.
this allowing or granting us access to the remaining special fund that was created for this division would help us, and actually would help substantially to get us to where we're trying to have this division be to protect our island.
Thank you. I didn't want to diminish your, your role in helping the public. I just want to highlight for the public how important it is to, I was a customs officer, and some of those PPQ guys, they transferred over to customs. And there was a nice mango at secondary, and he goes, "Watch this." So he peeled back the mango, sliced it open, opened the seed, and inside that mango was a weevil. It was unbelievable. I was like, wow, perfectly good mango. Pretty. I think it came from Korea. I'm not sure where it came from. But something as harmless as that, as pretty as a mango,
It's beautiful and delicious.
and beautiful and delicious, can harbor these types of pests. So yes, the work that you do is quite important. And I walk around in my yard, and I get bit by fire ants.
Yes.
And these are things when I was growing up I never experienced before. So yes, I do understand the importance of the role that you play. But I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and the funding is going to go to appropriate places, and that way we try to prevent these before they even happen. So now I understand. So customs, inbound, biosec guys from ag, outbound.
Yes, but also with the
Also
biosec.
inbound.
Yeah,
Also
inbound
too.
for anything that has been found on the commodities itself. Now, the Department of Agriculture is more in the technical side of things, where any insect pests that is found, it's forwarded to us, and then we make the regulatory decisions that's needed to, and mind you, this is for domestic commodities. Now, when it comes to foreign commodities, this is where the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes in, USDA, APHIS. That's where the support is needed, which is also, they're also housed with us at the plant inspection facility. So, so their support is very, very much needed, because we, as a territory for Guam, we have to follow both the 7 CFR, Code of Federated Regulations, and also the 8 GAR. So it's on both ends. So Customs and Quarantine here, which is our local Customs and Quarantine, has to both enforce both the federal and the local laws.
Right. Thank you, sir. And it's very important that we keep reiterating to the public how important it is to, know before you buy abroad and before you import. So thank you very much for the work that you do, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing further.
I'd also like to just clarify that when we saw the drop in interdictions, it wasn't due to any lack of knowledge or experience, but a lot of the PPQ officers were retiring at that time, and it's been challenging to hire new replacement officers and fill older positions.
Yes,
under
ma'am. You know,
CQA.
when they first had the PPQ, dissolved PPQ and transferred over, there was a lot of concern by the officers. I don't know what kind of move that was, or it was a political move or whatever, but it was it's disastrous for the island at that, and so I see it. I saw and the officers that were being transferred, they were saying, no, you can't do this, don't do this, don't do this. They went ahead and did it anyway. So we want to prevent something like that again from happening. And so I just wanted to make sure that we get all the information, you know, and brought to light before we do, you know, we make a move. But thank you very much for being here. I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. Senator Canasta, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Dwayne, do you have any questions for this panel?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman. So we just got the fiscal note, so we're understanding now what you've explained in terms of the revenues, the excess. But I want to go to something first. First of all, is there a representative with us today that is either the chair or a representative from the Guam Invasive Species Council? Okay, who is that?
Sorry, myself, sir.
Okay, so when was the last meeting of the Guam Invasive Species Council?
I believe it may have been in 2023. We tried to convene one earlier this year, but ran into issues with procuring the public notice announcement. We actually were all there convened, and then the meeting was challenged, so we reviewed the law relating to holding a council meeting and decided in the best interest of following the law, we canceled the meeting.
Okay, so as per the public law, if you're aware, because I wrote it, you need to be conducting quarterly meetings.
Absolutely,
with all
Senator.
mandated partners, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason why I lay this out, Mr. Chairman, for those that are, you know, with us today and watching, is that the design of this public law was to make sure that it was the Invasive Species Council that it drives the mission of the Guam Invasive Species, you know, Fund and what it was designed and set up to do. And there's two reasons for that. One is, of course, you've got all these mandated agencies that come together that compile the information and drive the plan, because you've got federal partners, Coast Guard, you've got all kinds of different local and federal that all deal with their mandated partners, because they deal with invasive species, and it's part of their mandate as well. So that drives the plan, and that also is a central repository for information to make sure that the efficacy, I guess the dog program came on as well after, and it looks like that was also the design of this law, was to ensure that we would meet requirements federally to apply for federal grants. And by having the Invasive Species Council, now you have the teeth behind you to be able to write for grants, because you have this organization and the mandated partners to carry out the mission, and it was to secure additional funding. It looks like it may have worked in this instance for the dog program. But I'm saying this to move forward. My issue is with the bill, really, and this is why I want to go down this road, is the way the bill is written doesn't match what the presentation came to today. And so I'd like to work with the chairman. I think the bill just needs a lot of work. And I'm kind of surprised, Chelsea, that you didn't just bring us, because I'm reading BBMR's submission here, and I'm just surprised that you didn't bring us a supplemental appropriation, because that would ensure that this funding that is to be used for the purpose is actually just embedded in the Biosecurity Division. The way this bill is written, unfortunately, I think the language is a little bit permissive in terms of general operations, because what we don't want to do is we want to make sure there's vendor payments here that's discussed in the bill, and there's also, we want to make sure that this is not commingled. We could really start to get ourselves in trouble if we use these for the general operations of agriculture outside of what the Biosecurity Division is designed for. And so I want to basically present that to you. Chelsea, why didn't you present this with BBMR as a supplemental appropriation?
Well, actually, I presented it with our oversight chair and discussed an amendment to the budget bill to allow us the access to the fund, but I believe the bill directs for the use of it for specifically to the biosecurity division's operations, not the general Department of Agriculture's operations. So I wanted to be sure of that as well, that it wasn't something that was permissive for us to use in any other division, but specifically limited to that. And I want to clarify that although we haven't been able to meet officially as a council, it hasn't restricted our collaboration with the partners who sit at GISC. And as an example, the public law that was passed to amend the Invasive Species Fund was done collaboratively with all of the partners who sit on the council, like the Port Users Group, the Chamber of Commerce. Everybody was included in that. And we also utilize our meetings with the Regional Invasive Species Council to ensure that the full complement of the Guam Invasive Species Council participates in those meetings as well.
Certainly, I wouldn't question that. The thing is what I'm saying is that the purpose of the quarterly meetings and that kind of accountability was built in so that there's a record. You know, I mean, I know you. I generally know you to be honest and forthright. I don't really not trust you. It's just a matter of the purpose of the law and the way it's written is so that there is a record. And this also allows for us to be able to have that built-in accountability and have the basis for applying for grants saying this is driven by the council.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. But let's do this together, okay? I'm just going to read the title. An act to authorize the Guam Department of Agriculture to use funds from the Invasive Species Inspection Fee Funds balance from fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 for the purpose of general operation. That's my concern. Now, the body of the act, it's a very simple bill. It's basically 10 lines. But the authorization does say the Guam Department of Agriculture is authorized to use the funds from the Invasive Species Inspection Fund balance for outstanding required vendor payments or for any expenditures associated with the operation of the Biosecurity Division not to exceed the fund balance of April 30, 2024. Authorized funds from Section 1 in this act are not subject to transfer authority. So yes, it does state that in the body kind of doesn't match the title.
I see.
It's close, but what I'm saying is in the body as it lays out for the Biosecurity Division. Now, of course, you've had your very capable assistant there provide us with this organizational chart, the reasoning and everything else underneath it, but if we were to do this as a supplemental budget, it would basically take your budget
and just add it
and
to
it would put all of those positions there, and that way it would be clear that your ASO could not journal voucher money from any account anywhere without that would be outside of the parameters of the law. And so there would be no question if we pass a public law. You know, I'm sure the chairman will work with us on this. This was my concern when I saw the bill, was that we would need to have an attachment to this that basically was, and I encourage you to work with BBMR to basically give you an amendment to this bill that is a supplemental appropriation.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
we welcome that. I want to ensure that the funds are used appropriately.
And that way it would be embedded in the staffing pattern, and then also when you go forward and start to fill these positions that are authorized, I made to believe more than likely these are classified positions. They have position descriptions, everything else, so that it's, you know, we know that the people that are coming on board have the requisite, you know, training, education, and requirements in their PD to be able to fill the positions. Absolutely. And that's why it's much more durable and much more appropriate to do it as a supplemental appropriation, because then we know there's no question about language that might be just a little bit permissive, and that because remember, this will become a public law if it becomes a public law. So sometimes public laws are subject to interpretation, and I don't want you to get in trouble, and we don't want to be questioning you going forward. So that's my main consideration, and I think that I'm going to make a recommendation to the committee to basically work with you and work with BBMR and OFB to make sure that this is formatted and the bill is amended to have a full staffing pattern, supplemental appropriation, and then, you know, when our senators debate this on the floor, they'll be like, we'll be able to clearly see that it matches the intent of the law, and that there's no other operational, because for the public, once again, and I'm sure you're very keenly aware, Director, that the general fund appropriations are given to you for the operations of Department of Agriculture. I'm sure you requested and that we were adequately funded your operations on the agriculture side. So this is a special fund, and it's designed for a specific purpose. So those are my general comments right now, Mr. Chairman, and I wouldn't say that there was any intent not to do this, in that fashion, but I just think from my comfort level to be able to proceed forward, looks like there's some committee work needed to be able to do that. So, Chelsea, once again, just as a final, to absorb this program as presented with regard to the detector dogs, is that part of your current plan? Because I noticed also in your presentation that we have an outdated strategic plan. Is the new one under construction, or was this just posted as outdated because there's a new strategic plan now?
Yeah, so that's actually what we intend to try and use also the funds for, is to generate this plan. Now, as far as the kinks behind it, well, this is where, we're going to need the Guam Invasive Species Council to help generate this plan.
The management plan.
The management
plan,
Guam
Yes.
Invasive Species Management
That
Plan.
was actually on our agenda for the meeting that we had convened and then had to cancel.
Okay, do you have a scheduled meeting going forward?
Not until we can get a purchase order for the public notice, which actually, with this body here, I think it would fail if I didn't mention that that's where we could also, I think, as all of the agencies could use some assistance, because the way that law is written is you have to absolutely publish in a newspaper of distribution. So even though we have like the Mariana's, or not Mariana's Variety anymore, whatever they're called.
I think is the only one of
that they're
general
shifted
circulation,
digitally, and one is still printed. We can only go with the printed one, and having it printed digitally doesn't count as public notice.
Okay.
And
Well,
so you have to have a requisition and a purchase order to even put it in the newspaper.
So right now, as per this outdated plan, you're operating, though, on whatever the strategic plan was there and what the structure is now, because once again, as this public law was put in place, it has three major functions, and I know there was a question by one of my colleagues here. So you've got the border protection, you're alongside customs at the
Yes.
border, basically. Inside, basically, is prevention, basically trying to stop any species coming in, and then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, of the developed invasive species that have basically taken root here, it's to work on maintenance and eradication of that. That's the whole spectrum of what the design is for the invasive species, organization in terms of what the division is designed for. So I just want to feel confident that this plan, although it says outdated, you are carrying that mission, but you need an updated strategic plan to meet what are probably the current
Absolutely, and even just the face of fighting invasive species has changed, as we're now dealing with marine invasive species.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as part of the plan, we want to include marine invasives.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why we had the Coast Guard and other port managers there, because vessels sometimes have a tendency to onboard and offboard water that they use for buoyancy, but sometimes they take that water from a different location. So you have to be able to have records of how they manage their ballast, and those are one of the ways that happens. So I'm very aware of that as well. Okay, well, like I said, I'm cautious right now. I can tell you, just being straightforward, I couldn't support this bill as currently written, but I certainly would like to see it in the form and format where a supplemental appropriation is formatted, and to ensure absolute accountability to the program and the funds. But thank you for your presentation, and this did help, because if it was just this alone without any type of a chart, we would think, one would think that you basically just had a pocket full of money that you can go out and spend. But of course, like I said, I trust you, and I know that's not your intention, but we have to do things here that is structured to where, we follow the full intent of the law. But,
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the presentation and the ability to ask questions, and I look forward to working with you to further enhance the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for this panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly echo the concerns by Senator Dwayne when I read this bill, because the title, essentially looks at using these funds that were set aside for invasive species for general operations, which I could only assume is for agriculture. And that would be problematic. And then even the language where it says that the balance for outstanding required vendor payments or any expenditures, again, the language in and of itself does not say that it's restricted simply for the use of invasive species. I think we all agree that the problem hasn't gone away and it's increased. I was there at the time the legislature did the change of absorbing PPQ into customs. That was an initiative by Senator Kinata at the time. This was after 9/11, where the federal government was consolidating pretty much all border-related operations, I guess because of it was a knee-jerk reaction to what occurred. But in my observation over the years, I don't think it's been successful. Customs will tell you that, yes, we do the inspections. I've seen the charts they hold up, and they look at the chart, they look at the plant, and maybe that's the insect, and they do that with everything else that they have to do. And I think what it's done, it's really watered down, not by their choice, but they have so many other things they have to look for. And this is a specialized field, even though some people think, oh, no big deal. But it is a specialized field. You need to have people that are educated and well-versed to know what to look for. And there's such opportunity for invasive species to keep coming into the island. The problem's not going to go away. Hopefully we can slow it down. Hopefully we can mitigate it. But my concern is the fact that the Invasive Species Council has not met for almost a year. The public notice, I don't buy that. I'm a very big advocate of the public notice requirements. I think when we spend millions of dollars of public funds and everything else, we have an obligation to make sure that the public is informed, and that is the legal process. It's the process the court uses to determine that they provided public legal notice. So that, to me, should not be an obstacle. I'm sure you have challenges with your procurement, getting it through GSA, whatever the case may be. But, you just keep knocking on their door until they process it. But you need to get that council active and in place, because it makes it seem like things are kind of laid back and slowing down, and maybe we'll get around to it, and the challenge is there every day. When I was at the Port of Guam, there was not consistent inspection. And I know that because sometimes we'd have two customs officers maybe board the vessel. 5 minutes later, they're off-boarding the vessel. I don't know how you do an inspection like that. And there are times when invasive species were on a vessel, and it took 2 to 3 or 4 times before port employees would be notifying customs. And it's on their, perhaps, recommendation that they call and say, oh, by the way, can you come down and inspect? We think we have a problem. It's not your people that are at the time that were there to determine that. And that's assuming that they make the call. Dr. Russell Campbell, we call him 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'd determine, yes, this is what we have, or we would send whatever it is to your office, and they would say, oh, yes, this is a concern. We'll send somebody down. And that de-watering down of the process really weakened our ability to be able to catch the concerns as they existed. I mean, especially military equipment. They don't go through the same scrutiny. They're able to move around their equipment without the same level of inspection we would have for other cargo. And that's something certainly we need to be concerned about. I don't have a problem with the funds being used, but they have to be used specifically for the intended purpose. And there's such a great need for it. So I think that definitely the language needs to be clarified in the bill to move forward, to get our support, at least my support, that it's simply only intended for the operations of invasive species related operations. But definitely getting that council back in place, getting that sense of urgency and making sure that they meet on a regular basis should be a priority. And I hope you do that, because we also need to look, and I'm curious still to find out, where did the funds go? Because when they transferred PPQ into customs, there were funds associated with that PPQ was receiving, that customs absorbed. And I don't know if they're still receiving those funds.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
So,
AQI.
Do you know how much that might be on an annual basis?
I'm not sure.
It would
'cause
be
you
good
say
to find
AQI.
out, because I think we should revert it back or recreate whatever semblance. I don't know if you want to call it PPQ or something else, but I think we need to go back to that specialized arm in Department of Agriculture that is there hand in hand at the moment of inspection. You got your customs officer, you got your, you want to call him PPQ for now, officer there doing the inspection at the same time so that they know what to look for. Customs can look for what they need, and we have already issues with contraband and narcotics and illegal drugs getting into Guam. And your person is going to be there to look for the concerns we have with invasive species. I think that's the only way we can do it, even have a fighting chance of addressing these invasive species issues. But the whole idea that somehow Customs has been able to effectively do that, I think the numbers continue to show us that that's not the case. And we maybe gave them an impossible task to begin with. I mean, how are you going to succeed if the task is impossible to achieve? So I think maybe those are things that we can look at. It would be very helpful to get the council back in place so they can come back and advise. If you recommend that that's a good way to go, that we can strengthen our mission by doing that, and having the key people with the credentials at the table and doing the inspections, then maybe that will give us a greater level of comfort. But I don't know about, do we keep these funds in Customs if they're not performing those duties? Because they're not. They're not to the level that we need and that we used to have. We used to have a specialized arm, and that got diluted in the whole process. So it would be good to find out what those amounts are and how much annually is coming in. I mean, Customs has their budget, I think. Is it tomorrow? Oh, good. I'll ask that question. Great timing. So those are my concerns, but definitely we need to see the Invasive Species Council operational. Public notice shouldn't be the reason to hold you back from that. With that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to comment and ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitigui, do you have any questions for this panel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues, as well to the panel that's here. Thank you so much for being here and bringing your whole troop here, and also to recognize those hardworking individuals at the Department of Agriculture. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I appreciate it. And as we work toward, being able to fill these positions, it's been my concern. I've been looking at this. I'm looking at the fiscal note, and it's showing here. Have you had a chance, Chelsea, to look at the fiscal note? Okay. Can you just follow along with me on this? Because I really want to understand something and get down to the nitty-gritty of what's going to make this happen. Number one, you have ISIFF appropriations, and it's showing in FY23 that $641,444 was appropriated. But it says FY24, as of February 29, 2024, $654,864. Is that what was appropriated in FY20? Okay, so that's how we're reading it.
Yes, ma'am.
So then when it goes underneath and says the amounts, 1.6,056,158, then if you go to FY24, it was only received 668,000, correct?
I'm sorry. Yes. Which part are you looking at?
I'm
Fiscal
looking
year 24?
right underneath that same box. Right.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was pulling up
Sure, no
our
worries.
email and then also looking at it on my phone.
Okay. So it looks like in FY24, only 668,000 was appropriated when the actual amount, well, no, it doesn't say the actual amount. It looks like in FY23, you received 1.6 million, correct?
Well, so that's the thing. We did not receive that until just this year. And the reason being is because, for one, we didn't have, we had the issue, and I think it was mentioned in the last budget hearing, that there was the issue of the shipping carriers arguing about the empty and transshipping fees, which we said, look, it's not worth, to me, it's not worth the fight of having them pay for empty and transshipping fees. So if you look in the law, the 31-43, it didn't say anything about type of cargo that we're charging. So at the time when the fee was changed to $26 per TEU unit, then there was a setback in payment, and so the payments weren't being made because of that dispute.
Yeah.
Which I totally understand. And so now, I think as of February, we were able to collect over $1 million. So and that's
1.4, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, okay, so
Yes,
so
right.
what we're saying
Yes.
is that in FY23, the collection was 1.4, but it's you see the next box down, right? It says 1.405.
Yes.
However, the appropriation was only 641, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Can you tell me what does ISIFF owed mean? So in FY23, it's 250,000, and then 24, it's 360. What does that mean, owed?
That meant that as of February 29th, because we still had shipping companies that were back paying what they owed for,
back pay.
for 2023.
So that's excess revenue.
Yes.
So is that incorporated into the collections of 1.4?
Yes.
Oh, so it's already.
Oh, no, not
okay.
yet, not yet.
Okay, so actually, it's really
final total was
1.6 million.
Yes.
Okay, and that's reflected on the one on the above, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how it. So if that's FY23, and only 641 was appropriated, what is your balance just for FY23?
It would be.
Is that 1 million?
The 1.6 minus the, yes, minus
It'd be
the 641.
1,014,712, right?
Yes,
Okay, so that's the money you're asking us that you need right now, you would like to have?
yes.
Okay, so then we're going over to FY24. And then when we look at that box, we see where we're at in February 29, 2024. So my question is, are we seeing the same type of revenue coming in to be about 1.6 million? Are we going to see that same type of revenue?
Yes.
Possibility is yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my next question is going to your organizational chart. Wow. I mean, everywhere is having issues filling vacancies. I mean, there's a shortage of manpower, of labor everywhere, not just in Guam, everywhere. And if the audience saw, just the orange colored versus the clear,
bring that up again.
it's just almost empty. You're not even 50% filled. So on a beautiful day, and you have all these positions filled, how much do you need to run this biosecurity division? How much is it going to cost?
I apologize. I had to laugh to myself because that's like, when they say hashtag goals, hashtag dreams, is having a full complement for the entire section. I haven't even dared to dream that yet.
Oh, you got to dream it, girl. You got to dream it.
We're dreaming as far as, can we get our invasive species coordinator back, or do that position filled and then another?
You're going to have to be competitive.
Yeah.
We're finding out that we're losing our people to the federal government because they're paying more. So you have to be competitive. We're losing even just, not just professionals, but just the, ordinary workforce.
Yes.
That are in like agriculture 1 or 2, So again, let's be real about this because this is needed. So in a perfect day, sun is shining, and it's all filled, how much money do you need to run this biosecurity division?
Yep, so, it's great that you asked that question because I already have the chart here.
Biba.
Including the staffing pattern of the special fund and, of course, all the schedules, Schedule B through F, I believe. And just adding up the numbers, it's $2 million.
$2 million. Well, that's doable, actually, because if you're looking at what it's bringing in on revenue at 1.6, and the anticipation of additional cargo coming in with the military buildup, let's be real about that too. It's going to bring in some revenue, right? It's doable. So what you need is some kind of subsidy, to get to that 2 million market. But that's awfully low with that many individuals because I noticed that your fiscal year 2025 proposed organizational chart.
Right.
I think one of the most successes is coming from the dog program. And yet, I don't see it in your program, in this chart. Why?
So, in fact, if you take a look at the second page, I envision with the dog program, right now, we want to be able to save the dog program before the federal funds have dried up. So what we wanted to do was to put him in these specialized positions. We called it the agricultural management specialist position. We wanted to fill them in before they were left with, how do I put this? So
Well, the challenge was that we don't have
don't
dog
have
trainer
positions,
positions
right.
created. So rather than having to go through the process of creating a position titled dog handler,
it'll probably take
It'd be a
year.
lot
Call them
faster,
Right.
just to
call
create
them
the agriculture management specialist,
specialists.
1, 2, et
Right.
cetera.
Which has already been
It's already
created.
created under, for
Okay,
our division.
Right.
so what is to the gentleman at the far end, I'm sorry, what is your name again, sir?
Senator, my name is Garrett Certeza.
Certeza, okay? I appreciate your comments that you made, your written comments. I appreciate it. Also, if you could provide us a copy of your testimony, if you can send it to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Because I think this is something that will work. You know, even though there was you brought us some circumstances where you caught the rhino beetle, you know, only three that you mentioned. I'm sure there's more. I think this is, you know, other than scanners, this is more lucrative because of these dogs being ability, you know, to, like Chelsea mentioned, that it amazed her when this rhino beetle was flying from the top and came and how many feet away, and the dogs were able to find it. So since you've been working, and it sounds like you know federal grants or how this is working, what is the possibility of the federal government continuing providing money for this program? What's the possibility? You're 3 years in, right? You're 3 years in.
Yeah, we are 3 years in, and the current grant that we are funded under is the U.S. Department of Interior
Right.
Technical Assistance Program. But I believe we have sought, given the predicament that we're in, sought additional funding from USDA APHIS. And I believe we are also searching, and Mr. Rosario can speak on that, from the Department of Interior as well, for an additional 1 year extension, or a grant that would extend us for another year.
Oh, I'd go for 3, you know, just continue the program every 3 years, you know, like that. They do it for public health all the time. You know, you can seek their assistance over at public health because they're very good at, you know, extending their grants not year after year, every 3 years, you know, sometimes every 5 years. So I think that it's very lucrative. So how much money did you receive for this? How much was the grant?
One moment, ma'am, while I just pull that up. So in August, the grant period is from August 2nd, 2021 to September 30, 2024. From the Department of Interior, Office of Insular Affairs, we received $866,423.
Okay, and that was enough to cover 4 dogs?
It is currently.
It is currently.
We are drudging along, but we are making it with 4
And
handlers and 4 dogs.
Would that also cover the individuals that they mentioned on agriculture management specialists 1, 2, and 3?
So it covered the trainers, the dogs, but it also built the kennels and then funded the training for the trainers. So since
But the
first
salaries
time,
of these individuals?
yes, and the salaries.
Okay, good. That's
so
what I
then
wanted to know.
that was factored in,
Okay,
but
800.
what we've looked at operationally to continue the program would amount to roughly $250,000 annually.
Okay, Chelsea, it looks like you're going to have to come back to this body and provide a substituted budget, okay, to incorporate what it takes to fill these empty spots. And, you know, you need to be competitive out there. You know, it's going to be hard because these are professional, you know, positions on this. Other than that, you know, at least it gives me an idea of what I need to fight for, you know, for this, to get it going and be a reality for this.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have any more questions okay, your chart, okay, see why you have your chart like that? That was my biggest question. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, so,
please.
sorry, I've been holding back here.
Go ahead.
So I did want to say that although I know you're asking how much it costs to operate the biosecurity division, but honestly, I'm really thinking bigger. In the bigger picture, you know, again, we have the Guam Invasive Species Council, which, again, the intent of this law is for invasive species. And as again, a mentor of mine has once said, invasive species is everyone's responsibility, right? And so with this council, we not only just want to, again, I have to say it with careful words, not just the biosecurity division, but as a whole council to be able, that is to help supplement also part of the council that is doing invasive species work. So it's really also beyond just the biosecurity division, but it's everyone that's doing the work of invasive species. So
Yeah, right
that's,
on.
That's what I want to mention.
Very well said. Thank you so much for that. And those who are listening, please take that to heart because it is everyone's responsibility. I appreciate, and I do understand there are some corrections to the legislation to ensure this would mean everything in operations in this division only. So other than that, again, I thank you so much for your opportunity and those hardworking individuals at Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions and comments. Your experience and expertise are invaluable in this process. I believe in the spirit of the mission to help with invasive species and to get this funding to you folks. I am agnostic on the mechanism on how we assist the Department of Agriculture. So to that end, for any of my colleagues out there, I will be willing to accept any and all amendments to make sure that this bill gets off the ground and you folks get the resources that you need. And we will do it with all the giddy up we can to get you that money as soon as possible. But that being said, I also echo the sentiments of my colleagues about, hey, what's up with this council? We'll get some giddy up on getting you these funds, but you also need to get some giddy up on getting this council together. So, I'll make that commitment to you that we will not sit on this and we'll make sure that we'll get you all the resources and help you need, but you guys also have to do your part as well. And if there are no further questions or comments, this will conclude our discussions on Bill number 314-37LS. Thank you all for your participation. We will take a short recess and come back for the next item on our agenda, and that is Bill number 290-37LS. We are in recess. Half a day and good afternoon. We are back from recess. This hearing is called back to order and the time is now 3:21. Notice of this hearing was disseminated via email to all senators and local media outlets on Thursday, June 6, 2024, and the second notice on Monday, June 10, 2024. Notice of this hearing was also posted and available on the Guam Legislature's website and the Government of Guam Public Notice Portal. We will hear testimony and discussion on Bill number 290-37 LS, introduced by Senator Dwayne Nicolas. I'd like to thank my colleagues who are joining us today. Senator Dwayne, Prime Sponsor, Senator Nicolas, Senator Brown, and Senator Tyson. We thank you again for joining us. We will now proceed with the discussions on Bill number 290-37 LS, which I will allow Senator Nicolas to read the title of the bill and his opening remarks as Prime Sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Bill number 290-37 LS, introduced by myself, an act to add a new subsection 1230 to Article 1 of Chapter 12, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to prohibiting the disconnection of utility services on Friday. Disconnecting and shutting off vital lifeline utilities such as power and water on a Friday is unfair and inconvenient to our residents, as it prevents or only gives the customer these important services a small margin of time to dispute or resolve their issues with the utility before being cut off and left without power or water over the weekend. Customers who have had a utility disconnected on a Friday will have to endure 2 consecutive days without these critical utilities before being able to resolve their issues the following week. With this act, our residents will not have to endure disconnection of any vital utility on weekends and provide them with ample time to address and resolve their issues. I introduced this bill for those who, like our monumentals, who to this day still line up and pay their bills, you know, physically. Like my auntie, and she, you know, every month they would go up and line up and pay their bills manually, literally, and they don't have credit cards. And so that's where I'm coming from. Also, parents with disabled children, also people who are diabetic and need their medication refrigerated. So those are the things, those are the reasons why I came about with this bill, to offer some ample time before they get cut off. Even me, you know, I suffer from chronic pain. So if I may have missed, and I often do sometimes miss things, you know, it takes me a while to get to where I need to go. And so I think this is a compassionate kind of thing. This is something that I thought about how it would help our people and those, you know, who are going through tough times and perhaps unable to make it quickly into your offices. And so that's why I did this. And I think it's a small measure, but it allows for people who are unable to quickly move and get into your office on time, give them some ample time. It's a little bit of a dignified way, I guess you can say, of how we can treat our folks. I wouldn't want some parent who could have resolved the issue have their disabled child or special needs child go through a weekend without the critical services that we provide for them. So that's where I'm coming from, and I hope you understand that. And that's it, Mr. Chair. That's my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. Senator Dwayne, or I'm sorry, I'm out of order here. Now I'd like to open the floor to testimony and discussion from those who joined us today. Before you speak, please state your name and position title for record-keeping purposes.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity to address you all today. My name is Elizabeth St. Augustine. I am GWA's Utility Service Administrator for Customer Service, and I submit this testimony today on behalf of GWA's General Manager, Miguel Bordallo, to express GWA's position on Bill 290. The Guam Waterworks Authority opposes Bill 290, which will prohibit GWA from disconnecting delinquent customers for non-payment on Fridays. GWA finds this bill unnecessary because the established process for disconnecting customers is already accommodating to customers provided they act on one of the many notifications sent to them prior to disconnection. The GWA customer accounts subject to termination for non-payment each weekday are more than 61 days in arrears. The GWA service rules allow disconnection for customers that are more than 30 days delinquent. In the ordinary course of business, GWA's customer accounts are not disconnected until could be as much as 83 days after the read date and 5 notifications of delinquency, encouraging payment or entering a payment plan. Any customer that enters a payment plan or has an ongoing dispute are not disconnected. To provide excellent customer service, GWA customer service locations are open Monday through Friday as early as 7 a.m. and remain open until 6 p.m. The Upper Tumon location is also open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. GWA customer care representatives work with our field response unit, who works as late as 8 p.m. each weeknight, to restore service to ratepayers who have paid in full or have worked out payment plans after making partial payments towards their unpaid balances. On Saturdays, the field response unit works from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. to restore service to customers who have made payments and worked out pay plans. GWA offers many payment platforms and online customer service options with automated functions that operate throughout each day. Ratepayers can make payments by phone, online, or in person without speaking to a customer service representative to restore water after full payment. GWA also has an online customer service portal where payment plans can be arranged from any location with an internet connection. GWA's automated processes immediately create a work order to restore water service after payment is made. When a payment plan is needed and only a partial payment is possible, our customer care representatives can quickly identify these customers and reach out to create a payment plan for the remaining unpaid balances and restore water service. Outside of GWA's normal business hours, ratepayers can, and occasionally do, reach out to our 24-hour emergency dispatch office. GWA dispatchers will contact our customer care section, which will then contact the customer and work out the restoration of water with our on-duty rovers when necessary. GWA has also set up automated reporting that is monitored continuously by the collections unit, even outside of our business hours, enabling the team to reach out to these customers and coordinate restoration anytime after 3 p.m. Saturday through 7 a.m. the following Monday. For several years, GWA has implemented automated customer contacts for anything from leak alerts to payment reminders to notices of higher than average consumption recording on the water meter. This automation is also used to notify our delinquent ratepayers when accounts become delinquent. Today, delinquent customers receive automated payment reminder phone calls, SMS text messages, and emails before the severance process even starts. GWA strictly adheres to our existing statutory requirement to give our ratepayers a 10-day written notice of termination sent via U.S. Post Office to the same mailing address as the water bill before any termination of water services can be completed. Termination of water services for delinquent GWA accounts is, for some ratepayers, the only way to bring the account current and improve our collections to revenue ratio. Ultimately, GWA has a responsibility to maintain financial accountability to ensure the ability to maintain facilities, run the water and wastewater system, and repay our creditors in a timely manner. GWA will continue to have the same number of delinquent accounts that require disconnection, whether allowed to perform this task in 4 days as proposed in Bill 290 or the current 5 days a week. If passed, Bill 90 will force GWA to hire additional employees to perform the same number of disconnections in 4 days instead of 5 under existing staffing levels. This will only lead to higher rates to accommodate a very small number of ratepayers who frankly have ignored the personal responsibility to act on the several messages sent to them, encouraging payment or entering a pay plan and warning of disconnection. GWA is still on an automated meter read system that requires a truck rollout for every service termination and the turn of an inlet valve. Although we are open on Saturdays for 4 hours, we currently do not terminate service for non-payment on Saturdays. Again, terminations for non-payments only occur Monday through Friday, with restoration starting as early as 7 a.m. and extending as late as 8 p.m. on weeknights and 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. The current automation for non-payment functionality excludes accounts that are on an active pay plan or have a pending disputed bill. The delinquent accounts currently terminated for non-payment have been properly and appropriately contacted via phone call, SMS, text, email, and finally a written notice of termination identifying the exact date when termination is to be expected. The accounts that GWA terminates for non-payment have been delinquent can go as far as longer than 80 days, with sufficient contact made far in advance. Prohibiting terminations for non-payment on any regular workday would prevent GWA from collecting unpaid water bills simply because for some ratepayers, water termination is the only way to compel payment. Please consider what this bill truly prohibits. Thousands of timely paying ratepayers reach out to GWA before their account balance becomes unmanageable and work out a pay plan. Customers needing longer terms are always given the opportunity to request them. The accounts cut for non-payment after 61 days past due have not responded to any of our attempts to secure payment or work out pay plans. Rather than pass Bill 290, please consider establishing and funding a GWA customer assistance program via Bills 273 and Bill 304. Water utilities nationwide have already implemented customer assistance programs for low-income residential customers. Programs such as this will provide the necessary help for struggling ratepayers to keep their accounts current and repair private site leakages quickly. Your support of these bills will help avoid customer disconnections, while prohibiting termination on Fridays will only delay the inevitable and increase GWA's expenses that will be borne by our ratepayers. So thank you for this opportunity to express our position.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. If you'd like, please.
Hafa and good afternoon, Senators. My name is James Borja, and I am the Utility Services Administrator for GPA's Customer Service Division. I am here this afternoon on behalf of Mr. John Benavente, General Manager of the Guam Power Authority, to read his testimony into the Legislature's record on Bill number 290-37, relative to prohibiting disconnecting of utility services on Fridays. GPA has two types of accounts: postpaid, in which customers receive a monthly billing, and prepaid, that allows customers to pay for their energy usage in advance. As of May 31st, 2024, the Guam Power Authority has over 53,000 customers, of which roughly 46,000 are residential customers. It has been a long-standing practice of the authority to not disconnect customers for non-payment on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Government of Guam holidays, or days preceding Government of Guam holidays, to prevent inconveniencing customers who have not made payment while our offices are closed. A small population of our residential customer base have opted into a prepaid agreement for their power service. This prepaid agreement is where customers make payment and power service is provided up to the amount paid. Prepaid usage updates and payment alerts when account balance is low are sent via SMS or text and email. For prepaid customers, it is possible for a disconnection to occur on Friday morning, should the credit fall below the minimum dollar amount required to maintain service. This is similar to mobile phone prepaid plans. There are roughly 1,700 prepaid customers, and the average number of prepaid customers that are disconnected on Fridays is 140. Approximately 8% of prepaid accounts and 0.3% of all residential customers. Should a disconnection occur on any day, the customer will be reconnected within 30 minutes of payment. Postpaid accounts must be paid in full, and prepaid accounts must meet the minimum required credit of $15 in order to be reconnected automatically. In the case that power service is not automatically restored within 1 to 2 hours of payment on evenings, weekdays, and holidays, GPA's trouble dispatcher will coordinate with personnel to manually restore service when reported by the customer. GPA and GWA customer service lobby hours are generally Monday through Friday, with some lobbies open by 7 a.m. and remaining open through 6 p.m. The Upper Tumon customer service lobby is open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Account payments can be made 24/7 via GPA's website, our mobile payment app, and by using the automated interactive phone system. GPA makes every effort to work with customers needing a short extension to payment due date or creating a reasonable pay plan for past due balances. GPA must assure that customers are treated fairly and equitably. Our current practice works well for both postpaid and prepaid customers as discussed above. In that respect, we believe that GPA currently meets the intent of Bill 290-37. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. Now I'll open the floor for my colleagues to ask any questions that they might have. Now, Senator Dwayne.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both representatives that have appeared before us to read the testimonies into the record. I pretty much going to defer to the author. I think his intent is to codify what sounds like pretty much already your practice, but I don't really have any questions. I think your position is clear-cut, but I'll see where the chairman, continues to take it. But it looks as though GPA basically, by and large, already does this. And then, of course, the way I read Waterworks is, just to make sure I don't get this wrong, is that it really is, it's not an issue of Fridays necessarily, it's an issue of you go over and above kind of into 81 days plus, and really then it's a delinquent account and you need to take action. Is that, they sum it up pretty well?
Yes, when the moratorium happened after COVID, right, we weren't able to terminate. So of course, when we resumed that, we had automation already put in place to identify accounts that are delinquent, and we have functionality that's already part of our customer information system that will generate work orders when they reach certain timelines. And so it includes the payment reminder, and all of that is all incorporated in our customer information system. But we started off with accounts that were 120 days in arrears and worked our way down. So right now we're at 61 days and over. But when we originally started using the automation, we were first targeting any account that's over 120 because the accumulation of bills from the moratorium, we had to recover from that. So we're down to 61. We're not ready yet to go to 30, but we have to also make sure that we can manage, because we're still on a automatic read system, so we still need the truck rollout. We still need to turn the inlet valve off, right? Unlike our sister company where they can do it from the command center. So we have to make sure the number is something we can manage, and we can make sure we complete the work orders. And there are some other technical challenges we have. Sometimes when they know they're delinquent, customers will park the car on top of the meter. We have issues like that, or just overgrown, vegetation. So those challenges hinder us from terminating, but we work through those issues as we encounter them.
Yeah, so like I said, I'll defer to what the final intent of the author. But I would just suggest maybe. I think GPA basically is already pretty much doing it in terms of not having Fridays, holidays, and weekends. That just seems straightforward, even though you're taking it out to 81 days. So I don't know, maybe some coordination. That policy seems. But I see where your general manager is coming from as well. So we'll continue to see where the author wants to take the bill. Thank you very much, Mrs. Masi.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly understand the intent of the author of this bill. The concern I do have is because you are an autonomous agency, you are revenue generating, and you do have bonds, and We just recently, a couple of weeks ago, for the Guam Waterworks Authority, addressed authorization of, I guess, over with the chair oversight, a little over $500 million of additional bond revenue that the Guam Waterworks Authority is looking at acquiring. And I guess the original amount that was presented was up to $800 million, which is one of the largest bond executions in the history of the government of Guam, which means our ratepayers, from what we've been told by GWA, are going to increase a 71% increase in their water rates over the next 5 years to pay for this additional bond funding. So because this is something that can affect your revenue stream, do you have any feedback from your legal counsel on would this have any impact on your bonds, existing bonds, or the current acquisition of additional bonds that we just granted authority to a couple of weeks ago?
I do know that there is a targeted collections to revenue ratio that is expected as part of our bond covenants. I believe that's at 99. We monitor it regularly, even we even monitor it weekly just to make sure that, you know, as we build accounts, how is our collections to revenue ratio going? But yes, that is part of our bond covenants to maintain a 99%.
Would this have any impact if the legislature now were to intercede in controlling how you collect or don't collect your revenue? Have you asked that of your counsel?
Yes, it will.
Would that impact any existing bonds that you currently have?
I believe it will. Yes, we have to terminate the accounts in order to bring. For there's just some customers that, unfortunately, they will not pay until it's terminated. Sadly, right? Despite the efforts that we've made to reach out to them and work out pay plans. So if we are unable to recover that or bring in that revenue and reduce our receivables, of course it will affect our bonds.
Well, are you allowed to provide free service?
No.
You're not. I'm assuming you're not. And I just bring that up because that,
thank you.
In the creation of these autonomous agencies where you do have your own ability to address revenue, I mean, there were reasons why the legislature created these autonomous agencies. And again, there are certain issues where it doesn't impact your revenue that probably the legislature can intercede without causing any problem. But obviously, when there is revenue-related matters, that's why I bring this up, because I certainly don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're adversely affecting the ability of you to continue to operate your existing bonds or execute acquiring additional bonds, especially I assume the Waterworks is on the process right now of doing that. But it might be helpful, and I understand certainly the presentation you made on behalf of your general manager. It's a tough job because you're not the general manager. You're simply here to deliver the message. But, I understand what's being relayed here, but maybe there might be consideration. I mean, how many cases on a Friday would you actually have to terminate? I mean, do you have a lot of clients on a Friday you have to terminate, or?
It varies depending on, the extent of the delinquency, right? Did they reach that threshold of 61 days and over? But on average, we terminate per day about 20 customers per day. That, of course, it could be a little bit more. It also depends on what the field crew physically find when we get out there, right?
Sure,
if we're able
you don't
to
know
do
the
it.
circumstances
yeah,
that are physically
but
there.
On average, we do about 20 a day, about 80 a week.
Well, the parking the car over the meter is a new one for me.
Yeah, we've had some.
I know I cannot crawl under the car to shut the valve off, but maybe somebody else is able to do that.
Yeah,
that's an image in my mind. I just, I think it might be something if Mr. Berdalio would reconsider. I think if he did that, that probably would make more than likely any effort to move this bill forward unnecessary. Because I think the point, I understand, I mean, even for whatever reason, we don't know someone's financial situation as to why they're not paying their bill, and you're right. Many will not do it until absolutely you shut off their water, and then they go, oh, wait a minute, this is pretty serious, I'm going to go pay my bill. And there's also a tendency, because it's the government of Guam, we just, maybe they'll get around to us, maybe they don't, no sense of urgency. But I think if the general manager were to reconsider that, there'd be less likely an opportunity for this bill to move forward. Because if GPA is accommodating, and sure, I understand GPA has a faster ability to turn the power on and off. You guys are one utility pretty much. We've consolidated you as such. Then I think there would be a non-issue. So if you can take that message back, and maybe
absolutely.
the general manager can come forward, or I don't know, maybe the sponsor of this bill maybe need to address this issue with the CCU and see if they come back and make it a policy for both utilities so there's consistency. Because I can live without power for a while, but you know, if it's on a Friday and you know, as the sponsor of the bill relayed, it could be someone who's disabled and has limitations. It could be elderly that are not able to just, you know, go get in the car and go and you know, take the gallons and load it up and unload it off the truck. That may be the case, and we may be putting people that are at a tremendous disadvantage in a very challenging situation if they don't have a recourse or at least a day or two to go and address whatever the circumstance might be. So perhaps if you can relay that back to the general manager, because again, if it's something that can affect, because it does address impacting revenue that could affect other bigger issues, I would not be inclined to do it, but then I understand certainly the intent of the author of this bill as to why this concern has been raised. So if you can relay that, it would be good. Maybe we could get the CCU to have a consistent policy for both utilities. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming down and providing testimony on behalf of Waterworks and also the Guam Power Authority.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Taitigui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to you both. Thank you for being here to testify. And, you know, Senator Brown brought up a concern, too, I had regarding bond covenants, you know. And, you know, it's one thing for us to create legislation to assist the, with what your needs are at Waterworks or at GPA, but, you know, when we start, you know, micromanaging agencies, then there's a problem with me, I have, unless you are severely doing something wrong or corrupt or just outright not being fair with customers, then there's a concern. But, you know, to try to micromanage your agencies, I mean, we don't have the expertise to do this. We definitely don't have the know-how on running an agency like that. I mean, some of us have run agencies before, but the bond covenants is probably one of the biggest concerns I have, and whether GPA has had this practice been going on for years and years and years, you know, before having your bond covenant and knowing all the, you provide the bond or those who are purchasing this, I guess the rules and regulations of your company and your operations is provided to those. It hasn't changed, but, you know, GWA might not have done that. I'm not sure, but I just wanted, if you're going back and bringing some information from Senator Brown, can you also make sure that if you guys are fair, to be fair. In other words, I don't want to hear that, hey, you know, Ted Maria, you know, she got a break and didn't turn it off on Friday and they waited till Monday, but, you know, Joe Cruz, he had his turned off on Friday. I mean, that's where my concern comes in, you know, favoring someone over the other. So if your practice is to let one person go and not another, then there's an issue. Go ahead, please.
So we have set up our system so we monitor any customer making payment when they've been disconnected. Any customer is disconnected, we monitor it regularly, at regular intervals throughout the day to make sure, even if they don't contact us, we reach out to them. If it's a partial payment, we'll say, hey, we noticed you made a partial payment. Did you want to work out a pay plan? So we reach out and we monitor that even when we're closed. So our field crew comes in 12 p.m. Saturday to restore anyone who came in on 8 to 12 at our Upper Tumon location. Mm-hmm. They work till 3 to restore anyone, but after 3, we have standing reports that are scheduled to run, and our collections unit supervisor, Jackie, you're here with me, she monitors that regularly all the way until Monday morning when we come back to work at 7, and then there's people assigned to do that. So even in our off hours, we monitor the system to see if there's been payments made, and then we will reach out to them. Some customers, like they were off island, they got disconnected, and they arrive late at night, they'll call and make the payment online, and they will call the emergency dispatch office. We'll call them, work it out, coordinate it with our rovers, and get water restored.
So you do have a 24-hour service available?
The emergency dispatch.
Right, yes. And then you also have someone working on Saturdays.
Well,
that, or at least you have a way to audit these accounts to
Yeah.
determine that, everyone is treated fairly, and which is very important, to have. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, I do have an issue with this legislation, so I just don't want to, step on your toes right now when you're doing, I don't have anyone complaining in my office, but if I do, I definitely knock on your door and ask you to audit that. So I have no fear about doing that. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
I just want to comment briefly on the bill proposed by my good friend Senator Nicolas. I think it's a bill that shows a lot of heart and compassion, and I agree with the direction that it goes. So I'd like to thank my colleague for introducing that bill. I think it's a good bill, and I'm not sure what direction the author wants to take the bill, but I will support any direction he wants to go in. And with that, I will now give the floor to Senator Nicolas to ask any questions or give any comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for appearing here. You guys are just the messengers, but I got the message, and first off, I'd like to thank GPA for, mentioning that you guys already met the intent of the bill, and you don't disconnect on Fridays and on holidays and on weekends, and so thank you for that. And you do have a much more easier or automated system to do so, and I can understand GWA's on procedures as well. But thank you for mentioning that up until Saturday at 3 p.m. you're still able to connect customers. So thank you for that. The intent of the bill is pure in nature. I really want to, when constituents come to me, they give me their ideas, and as a person like myself, I want to be able to be responsive to that. I want to give people a responsive government, and so that's where I'm coming from. And the intent is pure. I really don't want to have someone who's disabled, rush in there, or some parent who has to live without water or power, with a special needs child. So you can understand the intent of where I'm coming from. But I think for me, because most of, I think with the concerns of my colleagues and the exact nature in which you guys are already functioning, I think it's enough for me to, I think we may go back to the drawing board, or maybe I might withdraw this altogether, but I'm going to take this under advisement, and we'll see where we go from there. But I'd like to thank you for actually coming in here and, delivering the message, and also clarifying to us that there are certain avenues where our constituents or ratepayers have up until Saturday at 3 p.m. at least with GWA. But thank you again, once again, for appearing here, and I really appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure the public does too. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. And if there are no further questions or comments, this concludes our discussion on Bill number 290-37 LS. My office will continue to accept written testimonies on today's hearing within 5 business days from today, which will be mailed to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 905 of the DNA Building in Hagatna. You may also send your written testimony to my office via email, Senator Parkinson at guamlegislature.org. Thank you all for your participation. Bill number 290-37 LS is now duly heard. This public hearing is adjourned, and the time is now 4:54, or 3:54, excuse me.